I really need to work on that AI intro video and outro video that I want to do. Now that you can do, I learned how to do stuff for 15 seconds at a time and stuff. Anyways, yeah, this is Dave Marsh, the Spy Guy, coming to you live from the interweb in the Situation Room. I wanted to show off a couple things that news are. I haven't been able. I was away for the weekend, came back home Sunday, got tripped over in a snowbank and fought a snowbank on Saturday night. That was not the best time of my life. But yeah, I just wanted to get back into creating stuff. I said that last Thursday before I went to the convention. Now I'm a little bruised up, but I'm okay. So what I want to do is cover a couple of news stories that I've saw and get into them. So this one's from our friends at Redacted, and I'll go over there and be sure to like the video. And it's a short one, 15 minutes long, but it covers a lot of the stuff that I've been listening from other people like Tom Luongo for the last 2 years now, and just kind of prepping us for what's happening. This is what Trump's plan is,
which is tied to everything we just talked about.
And of course, it starts halfway through, and I really wanted to start at the beginning.
Enclave of Davos, we are watching a new world order unfolding right before.
And not the New World Order of George W. Bush or Davos's New World Order. This is the New World Order what we've talked about in the past, ARC, America, Russia, China. That's the New World Order we're looking at.
For our eyes. And I'm not being hyperbolic about it, because this past Friday, we witnessed the start of the Great Reset. 3 million Epstein files dumped on us, which are disgusting and disturbing to say the least. We also on Friday saw the biggest one-day drop in the precious metals market in history. And right now, as I'm recording this on this Sunday morning, we are watching something huge happening, a massive
Yeah, I'm not worried about this sell-off. I'm keeping all my gold and silver. I don't know about you.
Arbitrage happening between the Chinese precious metals markets, London precious metals markets, U.S. precious metals markets. Right now, gold is the indicator that a full-blown reset is upon us. Look over here at the U.S. ready to bomb Iran. Look over here at these new Epstein files.
What I'm hearing is that Trump basically allowed certain what we've been talking, these British Empire, these bankers that are manipulating the world for their profit, as we've seen in some of the other videos that I've been covering recently, where it is they've set up through MI6 a very extensive network, and basically it was allowed to burn out. I'm sorry to hear that. I was really rooting for the Iranians to get rid of the Ayatollahs. I think that would have been better. But if we weren't going to succeed in the first couple of weeks, it's not going to succeed. So that's how I look at it. If you can't take it, there's no general unrest, it's just being crushed and destroyed and put away. Sorry to hear that. I was really hoping for an alternative outcome, but that's what I have to say about that.
Files. But if you look over here, there's something massive happening that's resetting everything right now. So I want to connect the dots for you today with 4 key parts of this story as I see them, okay? 4 key parts. But first, some context here, because on Friday, President Trump nominated Kevin Warsh as the new Fed chairman. And yes, there's a lot of baggage that comes with this guy. Heck, the guy's in the freaking Epstein files. Like, couldn't have picked another guy? Anyway, I'm going to do a deep dive on him soon, but not in today's video. But just so you understand, he hates stimulus money, this Kevin Warsh. He hates stimulus. He hates quantitative easing. He voted against it. He thinks correctly that it pushes inflation higher.
Which it does.
Could have used him during the Biden years. He also changed his mind on interest rates. He used to believe that higher interest rates were good for the U.S. dollar, not any longer. He also believes the Fed shouldn't hold this much debt on its balance sheets. He wants the Fed to...
I wonder why people at Promethean Action and Tom Luongo like this guy, and some of the people that, friends of mine, but don't like Warsh for other reasons, are very down on him. But I'm glad to hear that from Redacted here that we're hearing what the thinking behind Kevin Warsh is. And I'm glad to hear it. So everyone else just... because they know, they didn't bother explaining on the videos I've been watching.
To slash its balance sheets, which will also lead to lower interest rates. So this is a huge move. And this move, though, means that we are effectively in a new dollar era right now. The globalists are terrified of us owning any kind of precious metals, dumping US dollars. So everything is changing right now before our eyes. So, along with this new dollar era, we are in a new petrodollar era. And this is important because if you're paying attention to the last cabinet meeting, the United States is now the largest producer of oil and natural gas in the world. This means the new petrodollar structure isn't sitting in Saudi Arabia anymore. It's now in the United States. And the trifecta here that just happened is a new plan for the US dollar at the Fed, the precious metals market dropping like a bomb thanks to speculators dumping their holdings and everyone taking profits, and then the US control over the petrodollar, energy policy. So all of this just happened basically on Friday. The petrodollar system was controlled by OPEC, were the source of endless Middle Eastern wars. This has now changed, meaning no one can shake Washington down on energy anymore. We produce more than you do. That makes every American 1,000 times safer as long as we don't continue to do Israel's bidding and bomb Middle East countries.
Yeah, I've talked about Israel's problem. It's like it all comes down to the Suez Canal, and Egypt gets a lot of money as well as Israel. But Egypt doesn't go attacking its neighbors every 6 months. Okay? We need to get Israelis. A Jewish friend of mine said once, the problem is with Israel is that it's like the unicorn theory of women. You get 2 out of 3 good ones, and you get the third one kind of sucks. And it's like, Israel, do you want it to be Jewish democracy or have the whole old classic Israel? And then we're like, oh, I would think you'd want Jewish democracy. And he said, yes, I would like Jewish democracy. The problem is there people running Israel right now think they can have all 3. And I'm like, I don't think that's going to work out. Probably not.
We'll see what Trump does there. If you really want to make America safe, stop listening to that demon Netanyahu and actually bring our troops home out of the Middle East, 50,000 of them back to the U.S. We've got our own problems here at home to deal with. But the neocon Fox News crowd would love nothing more than for Trump to kiss Netanyahu's ass and do whatever he wants.
Okay, let's bring in former Secretary of State and CIA Director Mike Pompeo, a Fox News contributor.
But one thing at a time. And just so you understand what happened on Friday, with everyone selling off silver and gold, a few weeks ago, the U.S. stole Venezuela's oil. It's ours now. China was pissed. They are one of Venezuela's largest oil partners, settling these transactions in the Chinese yuan instead of U.S. dollars. Well, America swoops in, kidnaps Maduro, steals their oil, kills hundreds of people, by the way, which didn't get any headlines. China then responds, limiting silver export controls. Countries and banks panic. People buy up precious metals like crazy because now the United States and China relationship is heading for disaster. But then things suddenly turned around. The U.S. and China calmed down. Things started to get back to normal. Trump and Xi Jinping are going to actually spend the autumn together, maybe holding hands and walking amongst the leaves. I don't know. Like they like each other again. So then Friday, it all comes to a head. Right?
Like this is all planned and coordinated, and why we are constantly seeing people flying in and out because they can't talk over their traditional intelligence networks because they're compromised. So the only way what often seems like Trump is basically selling out to certain interests, it's because he's bringing them in and having face-to-face conversations because he can't trust the phone system because NSA's compromised everything.
Right? Oh, things are calming down between the U.S. and China. All these leveraged bets and Wall Street speculators who overbought on the China tension. They bought tons of silver and gold.
Well, we got a fire alarm. Shit. Woot! False alarm. Okay. No, I wouldn't be surprised that the fire trucks are on their way. That's kind of how it works, but I'm not that worried about it. They can bang on my door if they want. I'll say I just didn't realize. Anyways, back to the live stream. Sorry about that, folks. Whoever watched this later.
They suddenly decide to take profits, dumping it. The markets tumble. But normal people like me just doubled down and bought more silver and gold on Friday.
Right?
Hey, buy the dip when these idiots play this speculation game. I don't want to have anything to do with those morons. Which brings me to the 4 main points that I wanted to make that a lot of people are missing in this whole story. Number 1, Trump wants a weaker U.S. dollar. And that's why I'm buying as much silver and gold as I can get my hands on.
Well, I'm a person that likes a strong dollar, but a weak dollar makes you a hell of a lot more money.
What people don't understand is that Trump doesn't want to push up higher inflation or debase the currency. That's a conspiracy theory. He wants a weaker currency because the U.S. now controls the world's energy markets. And he's trying to turn the U.S. into a manufacturing hub and massive exports to other countries instead of us importing everything from China.
By the way, that's what Ontario is doing. Just came back from the state convention, and the plan is 16 megawatts of nuclear power within the next 5 years. And of course, we're going to sell that all to you guys because you're making all these data centers. We want to be selling it to you. And I would like a weaker U.S. dollar because my money would go further in the United States.
In Vietnam and India. Of course, all of this might blow up in his face. I don't know. Might be the dumbest move ever, right? Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you what he's doing. But certainly the Clinton, Bush, Obama.
I'm telling you what he's doing too. I've been watching, expecting for this to come for years, a couple years now.
Obama era of shutting down all of our manufacturing destroyed our country. So what choice did we have? Does he have?
Don't forget that Bush was in on that too.
In order to compete with China and India, he believes we need a weaker U.S. dollar, a weaker currency, just like the Chinese yuan is weaker. And India's rupee, which is basically in the toilet as we speak. It just hit an all-time low. It's one of the worst performing currencies in Asia. So he believes we need a weaker U.S. dollar to create a manufacturing boom in the United States to compete with China, India. So this is a new era that we are entering in. This isn't some small policy tweak. It's an intentional move that could last a decade or more. Again, it could be a disaster, total disaster. We won't know for sure for a while, that's for sure. But certainly we're sitting in a disaster right now thanks to Obama, Biden, and Clinton. Now, the second point that we need to make is this is the end of the Fed's independence. So since 2008, the Fed has essentially become more independent. No, they're not technically independent. They still have to answer to Congress, but give me a break. So they dropped interest rates to nearly zero back then, created a housing crisis. No one did anything to stop them. No one stepped in and said, don't do this. Obama certainly didn't. Now we're entering a collaboration era between the Treasury Department and the Fed. Scott Bessent and Kevin Warsh literally worked together under Stanley Druckenmiller. Their desks were side by side. This means we're heading for much lower interest rates. And if you lower the value of U.S. bonds and U.S. treasuries, then foreigners are going to dump those bonds.
Yep.
And that means those bonds will now come back home. And the United States will be sitting on that debt. I will own this debt, not China or Russia. And we'll see what this means. This is a bombshell. I mean, this means that foreigners will not own these bonds anymore. American pension funds will.
Be able to blackmail.
Now, what will they be worth? I don't know. So again, a lot we still don't know. But the next part of this great reset that we're seeing, number 3 on this list, in my opinion, is energy wars. So what Trump is doing with energy is a total shift from the Obama-Biden era. We are entering a Trump energy war era. No bullets, no killing, but import and export wars over resources. The United States is now drilling and now producing more oil and natural gas than Russia and Saudi Arabia combined. Energy is the Achilles heel of China. They are the biggest importer of oil in the world. Yes, they produce their own, but not nearly enough to survive, and they're the biggest importer in the world. They cannot function without it. They don't have enough.
So I wonder whatever happened to that German coal refining into oil. I looked into it a few years ago because it kind of was interesting, and it seems to be that the people who ended up capturing it said it was not as economical as the current oil system, but you never know. I wouldn't be surprised if China's still trying to figure out how the Germans did that. Because if they could, that could be a real game changer for them to have their own ability to make oil out of coal.
Enough of it. China retaliated with silver controls after Trump took over the Venezuelan oil fields. This is going to get much worse, guys, much worse. And the fourth part of this reset is that he needs Americans to go along with all of this volatility and all of this drama, which is tough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Will they? Will Americans go along with it? Well, according to sources I've spoken to in the Trump administration, Trump and his team see it like this. During the Obama, Clinton, Bush, Biden era, which Americans were rewarded with sending jobs overseas and manufacturing leaving the United States, thanks, it was the elites who benefited from all of it. The elites. Ross Perot nailed it when he said the middle class would suffer. He said there would be a giant sucking sound leaving the United States, and the average American would suffer.
And you don't care about anything but making money, there will be a giant sucking sound going south.
He was right. Now Trump's team wants to stop that. They're planning to declare a housing emergency to lower interest rates, stop Wall Street from buying single-family homes, tariff dividends to Americans, those 1776 checks to veterans, U.S. veterans, lowering inflation, lower gas prices. Now, he knows that most Americans don't care about Ukraine. He knows that most families vote with their wallets. So ahead of the midterms, right? How's the economy doing right now if I'm going to go out and vote Republican or Democrat or whatever during the midterm elections? Is it helping or hurting me? Do I have a job, etc.? So this is a huge gamble that is all coming together right now in multiple parts as we speak. Now you have the MAGA Fox News crowd saying, see, Trump is Jesus Christ. He has it all figured out. He walks on water. Ignore everything in the Epstein files. Ignore all the times that Trump's name appears in the Epstein files or Bill Gates and all. Just forget about it. Trump is God. Mm-hmm. And then you have some economists saying this is a crazy move. Trump's insane. And it really doesn't matter how you feel.
And who trained those economists who believe in this the cult of the free trade? The British.
About it. It's actually happening, right? You could be like angry liberal. You could be like
London School of Economics.
Mega cat turd. I'm excited about life. I love everything that Trump does. Doesn't matter. It's happening, right? So it's like, I want to understand how it's all happening. This reset is now officially here. So that's the news update part of the video. Now I want to talk to you about today's sponsor, which is...
And we'll skip out on the sponsor because I'm not doing free, allowing someone else's advertisement on here. But it's probably a gold stock. Oh, he does have a bit more here. Let me just boom it ahead.
Copper, vital for defense, AI infrastructure. It underscores America's vulnerability to foreign dominance. In February 2025, President Donald Trump signed Executive Order 14220, initiating a Section 232 investigation into U.S. copper imports. Now, the investigation, completed in June, led to a presidential proclamation that imposed 50% tariffs on semi-finished copper products, including wires and cables. And that was effective on August 1st, 2025. So what happened on August 1st? The copper sector, in my view, entered a brand new ground floor seismic level opportunity, marking the beginning of a transformative new phase right now for the entire industry. Now, what we've been seeing is the very first chance, in my view, to be a part of the rebirth.
And by the way, they just found a giant vein of copper up in Alaska.
Of the American copper mining business. You know, we can access it basically as at a founding moment, as far as I can tell. Giant Mining owns a past producing copper mine in Nevada, one of America's best and most cherished mining jurisdictions. Giant Mining, in my personal view, is my number one copper ID. I stand by this statement. Howard Lutnick said, American industries depend on copper. It should be made in America, no exceptions, no exemptions. And then Trump said copper should be made in America. It's time for copper to come home. So you have historic underground mines at the Majuba Hill Project produce copper, tin, and silver from the early 1900s to the 1950s, including 2.8 million pounds of copper, 184,000 ounces of silver, 5,800 ounces of gold, 21,000 pounds of tin. I'll say this again. All of these factors And the following ones below are the reasons that led to my significant bullish opinion about giant mining. So the infrastructure is ready. They have access roads, power supply, transportation, water supply. They have ore stockpiles, and they have established road access. They have power nearby. They have space for potentially processing infrastructure as the project advances, which is huge. So guys, do your own homework on giant mining, and their ticker symbol is right here on your screen.
So that was kind of I did cover some of his commercial, but that's okay. It was kind of interesting and informative. Next one up, we'll go into Rick does politics. He's got Alex Trainer on, who is an interesting guy.
So incredibly important, and nobody is talking about it the way it needs to be talked about. That's what we're going to be talking about in this video. Hey, Alex, I just have to forgive me. I cut myself. I know the link's in the description below. I'm just getting ready to shave for you. So, Alex, I asked you, what are we going to talk about? What's uppermost? What's topical? And you said...
I said opium wars.
And I said, but that was over 150 years ago. I mean, perhaps it was older than that as well, 1806 or something.
Mm-hmm.
It first started, the first opium war between Britain and China.
You can go watch the movie Taipan. It's all about it.
This is 2026.
Yeah, you see, it never went away, and it's very much with us today. Only it's clearly not being talked about. It's not being discussed, but it's very much an actual talk.
It's not talked about. Yes, it is talked about, but it's only talked about in spaces like this one. This is why I'm trying to get these out to you, give you a chance to not only my thoughts on things, but also just give you a chance to see other perspectives as well.
Topic for, let's say, people who are in security and law enforcement, particularly in the United States, but it's generally global. And I think that it is a concern behind Nicolas Maduro abduction. And it's probably one of the most important parts of that, remember, conflict between the two systems of governance. Because while conventional war is visible, it's well understood, and I hesitate to use this word, but I'll use it anyway. It's clean because it happens in the battlefields. Opium wars, and I call them opium wars because that's how we recognize them in history. It's not opium anymore. Now it's pot, fentanyl, meth, all kinds of synthetic drugs. But they're entering the United States in enormous amounts. And
other countries as well.
Not only is that happening, but over the years, in pretty much the whole of the South American countries, the law enforcement has been gradually and systematically gutted to create an open terrain for drug cartels. And
okay,
so,
how do you come by this? Because we don't hear about it, nobody talks about it. You know, yeah, there's
made the show Narcos.
but now
you see that
closed.
Trump often mentions that over 100,000 people die of overdose every year. So that's just the people who die every year. So that's 2 Vietnams almost every year in the United States. That's a lot of people. But it's worse than that because something around 20 million people in the United States consume illegal drugs. Over something like between 8 and 9% of the entire population. The problem is extremely insidious because it gradually guts the system of law and order, and you get an environment where you live in where you lose security, where people live in fear, where nobody dares to oppose the cartels, nobody dares to report on the activities of the cartels. Cartels act with impunity, and in that environment, the worst of the worsts come up on top.
Mhm.
And then we have to understand that the cartels in and of themselves could never exist in such power as they are, but for the services of the money laundering banks.
Right.
And what we know about the money laundering banks is that the whole network comes together in the city of London. And we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars a year.
Yeah, and there's those who don't understand what the city of London is, it's not London metropolitan. It is a 1 square kilometer block in the heart of London that is controlled, that is an independent feudal state, like Gurney, and has all the British banks and a bunch of other banks are in there as well. And that's just like this independent. So they're not account because they live in this little a little feudal state. They're not subject to all the rules and laws that everyone else is. That's what the city of London is.
That are laundered, not just for the drug cartels, but for all kinds of criminal activity, because the cartels deal drugs for money. They're into money making. It's a business.
Yep.
But when they make money on drugs, they also make money off of protection rackets, kidnappings and extortion, car theft, oil theft, anything that they can systematically exploit in a given nation. Now it's, the Western Hemisphere is for some reason very much in the crosshairs. But I think when you analyze this particular war, and if you look at U.S. law enforcement, border control, you look at the interviews with these officials, you look at their statements, you look at the documents that they publish, you see that it's very much an actual thing. It was just overshadowed perhaps by Iran and Israel and Palestine and Ukraine and so forth. But this is where the United States is really at the receiving end,
where he's closer to home,
of the most insidious kind of warfare that there is. And it's coming from both sides. It's coming from the south and it's coming from the north. And just to give you an idea about what it means to live in complete lawlessness and insecurity, Mexican drug cartels, we read every so often some article about this. It's far away there. It's kind of abstract. Here and there, somebody gets killed or a group of people get killed, and we think like terrible stuff. There's like whole massacres that have been happening in the last 10 years in Mexico. Mexico was at one point the second most deadly nation to live in after, back when Syria had a civil war, Syria was top with maybe 50,000 casualties in a year. Mexico was number 2 with something between 3,000 and 4,000 casualties a month. So coming close to 40,000 casualties a year, according to Mexico's own statistics. I'll give you an example. In 2011, there was a massacre in a town called Allende. The Los Zetas cartel found out from the Mexican government, which was informed by the CIA, that there was an informant in this town. and they didn't know exactly where he was, and the cartel went to that town, and they went to find the man or woman, I don't know, and they didn't find him. But what they did is they rampaged through the town. They devastated people's houses, and they killed between 60 and 300 people. The exact number is not known.
Wow.
But usually, including children,
Yeah.
because they go there to make an example so that nobody ever anywhere dares to oppose them, to inform them that they killed many, many journalists. So people in Mexico lived and still continue to live in fear of these organized crime groups.
Mm-hmm.
That situation can easily become the reality of the United States of America. If it wasn't for Trump, under Biden administration, almost immediately when Biden took over, he dismantled some of the security provision that Trump had implemented in his first administration in order to defend the border, so that they check the flow of migrants, weapons, cartel members, drugs, and so forth. The Biden administration almost immediately dismantled on that, and then they made the United States, border completely porous.
Yeah.
So this malignancy was starting to go into the United States.
Basically an invasion.
This is an opium war. This has all the hallmarks of the opium war, and we have to remember that the British Empire brought China to its knees by virtue of their opium war against China. And China at the time was not just some backwater, over in Asia. China was the world's premier economic superpower, a 6,000-year civilization. But this is so pathogenic, this is so destructive, that it seems to me that when Trump's national security strategy, which was just published in December, right, is talking about dismantling the infrastructure of hostile states in the hemisphere, they're actually talking about this.
Yeah.
This is that infrastructure. The cartels, their organization, and their money laundering apparatus, and everything that enables them. And everything that enables them is practically goes all the way up to the top of the governments in many of these countries.
Okay, but now the border's closed, so they can't get through. Trump's taking on Canada, so that northern border isn't going to be used the way it was before. The US and the UK are allies, so
That's no relation.
Stop laughing. You laughed and I couldn't keep a straight face anymore. They've got a special relationship. So who is behind this? And is it still going on? Hasn't it ended now?
No, it has not ended. You see, Rich, I always like to remind everyone, we are in that clash between two systems of governance.
Right.
And on the one side, you have this, what I would call global empire. You could call them globalist, New World Order, one world government, rules-based global order, etc.
Mm-hmm.
This is the
rules never apply to them, of course.
Key. This is literally the key that explains everything else, all other events in the world. You see how people fall in one camp or the other camp, right? Let's say Jake Sullivan, the Clintons, Anthony Blinken, Biden, the whole Democratic establishment in the United States, they're all in the globalist camp. European powers, NATO, Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, et cetera, et cetera. But now there's a resistance that is forming against all this. And part of that resistance was the American people fed up with tens of millions of immigrants, fed up with watching over 100,000 of their fellow citizens die from overdose of fentanyl and other drugs that are pouring in through Mexico and pouring in through Canada. And they didn't want, they wanted a new deal. They wanted a new government, and now they have Trump in power, right? And well, so far so good, but you have it in the UK as well, because that's the epicenter of it, and you have it in the form of the grooming gangs, which is an enormous problem. And so
I was talking to my business partner about that. She did not know about it, the grooming gangs in the United Kingdom, but she is Pakistan. She's from Pakistan, and she's like, yeah, that's all men there. They are all convinced that they all want to breed with white women to change their race and basically colonize that. And I was like, wow, okay. And then it's a combination, because you don't see these same grooming gangs with Pakistanis in Canada and the United States, because we enforce the law. In the United Kingdom, it was a class thing for the British elite as well. All these people who just wanted to keep it covered up because they actually hate girls from Manchester.
So all these organized crime groups, whether in Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, Canada, UK, Ukraine, you name it, they all generate enormous amounts of cash. If you remember, in 2012, we had the case where HSBC was busted for laundering money for Mexican drug cartels, and that there were some of that money they funded terror groups around the world with some of that money.
Yep.
Terrorist organizations. Do you know how much money was they were talking? $880 billion that was proven.
Wow. Nearly $1 trillion.
And that was just one incident.
That was back in 2012. Yeah. It only got worse.
For something.
And the banks that were involved, that were caught involved, include BMO, TD Bank, Canadian TD Bank,
America's
HSBC,
Community Bank,
Citigroup, Wachovia, JP Morgan, Credit Suisse, Deutsche Bank, UBS, Standard Chartered, BCCI, Societe Generale, Danske Bank, ING Bank. Practically all of them are doing this. And the way that we know that the banks are not just providing this service because there's some bad apples inside the bank that don't apply money laundering rules to the letter. The way we know this is because banks have the KYC, know your client, know your customer requirements. So if somebody's generating 300 million or 400 million worth of cash per week, bank officials are obliged by law to know what exact activity is generating this money. So they're obliged to even go to the premises of these businesses and to see what they do. And for that amount of money, even the CEO has to be informed and has to know the people, has to know those clients. Mm-hmm. So to say they're like, oh, we didn't know, it was just some bad officials down at the bottom of the hierarchy. No, that doesn't wash.
Yeah.
Another way that we know is that when the financial crisis broke out in 2008, the global financial crisis, and banks were going to go belly up, that the Mexican drug cartels invested close to $350 billion into some of these European banks to keep them from going bust. And that's according to, United Nations Crime and Drugs Agency, whatever the exact name is. That tells you that the banks are leading in this business.
The banks are the cow.
I remember the global financial crisis. Everybody got hurt. A lot of people got hurt. Bank stocks were in the tank. There was a great deal of hesitation about the banks, and there was an expectancy that the banks would fail, that many banks would fail. And so, for somebody to say like, oh yeah, like what a great idea. We're just going to put $350 billion into these wonderful banks. It doesn't wash. And I expect that the cartels made this investment because they had to make this investment because their partner in crime was about to fail.
Right.
But their partner in crime was not just the partner, they were the senior partner who told them like, look, we're gonna need your help. So, guess where you're investing your money. And the cartels had to say, yes, sir. Anyway, another way that we know that this is the case is because without the money laundering services, cartels couldn't exist.
Right.
Why? Because they generate hundreds of millions of dollars in cash every week. Probably close to $40 billion per year. So it's an enormous thing. They repatriate a lot of this into Mexico, into Canada, and so forth. You can't run a business on pallets of cash.
Right.
Because you have to store them somewhere. You have to pay people to guard it. It becomes a magnet for enterprising criminals.
Right.
Meaning, if you hire a bunch of violent thugs to guard your money, these violent thugs might mean like, there's a few $100 million in this warehouse that we're guarding. And we're getting paid like, what, a couple of $1,000 a month? Why not just take the money for ourselves and start our own cartel?
Right.
You understand? So
Seen these movies?
that incentive would make it so that the cartels would, if they were based on just cash transactions, they would immediately splinter into 1,000 groups that would, fight one another and probably eliminate themselves in a very quick time. Most of it would vanish. But when you have a money laundering operation, that means that money ends up in clean bank accounts where somebody has the signature, which is going to be the cartel boss's CFO or somebody that they can rely on, and which means that everybody else depends on that person. They sign the paychecks. They sign off on purchases because they end up, once you have clean cash in your bank account, then you can spend it on whatever you like. You can buy military equipment from Ukraine, whereas if you have pallets of cash, you can spend it on champagne and caviar and fancy cars and houses and prostitutes. But, there's only so much of that you can spend. When it's clean in bank accounts, you can buy helicopters and rocket-propelled grenades, and you can buy tanks and armored personnel carriers and submarines and so forth. And Mexican drug cartels have all these things. Okay, it can be done without money laundering services.
Okay.
So anyway, this is the infrastructure that the Trump administration is after. I don't know exactly what role Maduro played in all this, but it seems to me that that role was lateral. It was marginal. It was not really. He wasn't the kingpin. Maybe he knew a lot of things.
Yep.
Maybe he knows a lot of contacts, but he wasn't a major player. So for that reason,
It is interesting that Tulsi Gabbard ended up in Fulton County, Georgia, with the machines there, which have been suspected to be connected to Venezuela. Just saying.
the 21st century opium war is also the key to understanding what happened in Venezuela. And I finally came to the conclusion, because nothing else adds up, that Trump took Maduro out of Venezuela to preempt a real regime change operation that was coming.
Oh, crap.
And that one wasn't driven by Trump. That one was driven by the other camp, the same camp that runs opium wars.
Interesting. There's an interesting idea.
Ah, and who might that camp be? And then what's the connection between TD Bank and HSBC, these money laundering banks? Who are they working for? Or are they just working for themselves?
Well, it's not just Alex Craner saying it. There's multiple investigations, including in the UK. They all come to the conclusion that the whole network comes together in the City of London. If that's where the money comes, that's the head of the operation.
Okay. But why would the City of London do that? It's not like they have a track record in using opium and alcohol as a way of destroying other nations.
Well, yes, except they do, right? Yeah, they do. This is extremely effective. It's extremely powerful. It's extremely remunerative because it generates enormous amount of cash. But it's not just them. There's also all these international organizations that are involved, which have the air of legitimacy. You know, like Organization of American States. You know, things like this, where you have ordinary people wearing suits going to the office. But what these organizations have, by weird magic of the post-World War global order, is they have complete immunity before the law. So nobody can touch them. You cannot even go to their archives without their permission. You cannot even come to their premises without their permission, even in the United States.
And so, also they can transport, like they have diplomatic immunity, so their bags can't be inspected as they're going from one country to another.
Yes, that is correct. And the laws on these immunities, like in the United States, you have something called International Organization Immunities Acts of 1945, whereby any president of the United States can grant some international organization legal immunity. And then if that organization, the way these laws work, if that organization goes into business with some other, it can be any, let's say they go into business with Alex Craner, their immunity transfers to me. So now I have immunity. And in many cases, my family members get the same immunity of that organization. So they have no accountability to any nation and its laws. They operate completely outside of the bounds of the law. And so the interesting thing that happened just a few days after Maduro was brought to the United States is that Trump administration announced that they were cutting their ties with 66 of these international organizations. That's 66 out of 76 that enjoy legal immunity in the United States.
Wow.
And many of these organizations were completely committed to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, the global goals, the UN Agenda 2030, Great Reset, Build Back Better, all of that stuff. So all of that stuff was operating underground, but it was spreading throughout the hemisphere, and it included creating a universal birth registry, reforming education, gender issues, issues of public health. There's a PAHO, which HO is health organization. I forget
Public
what
health. Okay.
It's like World Health Organization only for the Americas.
But Alex, these are laudable claims. We want people to be healthy, and why do you laugh? We want people to use novel medical interventions when there's a pandemic, don't we?
But you see, this story is very relevant to what we're seeing today. Okay? Because we just had those riots in Minnesota. And the whole world went mad over the assassination of Alex Preddy and the other woman,
Renee Good.
The pattern is almost exactly the same as something that happened in Mexico, I think in 2017. So you had Enrique Peña Nieto, who was president at the time, and he wanted to ramp up war on drugs. And so I think they made some major bust of one of the cartels. And then what happened next is that you had demonstrations by teacher unions in one of the Mexican states, and these demonstrations got quite lively, and let's call it aggressive, but not maybe because of the teachers who turned aggressive, but whenever they organize these demonstrations and these protests, they infiltrate them with violent groups. So there was some altercation between government forces and these protesters, and I think a couple of people got hurt or maybe even killed. And then all of a sudden, protests erupted everywhere in sympathy with these teachers' unions. And suddenly these sympathy protests erupted everywhere in the world. It became like a major story around the world at that time. Oh, government overreach, government abuse, police violence, la la la, human rights, civil liberties, all against the government to try to force them to retreat from the war against the cartels. Now, you see, when you organize these massive protests, and then suddenly there's a contagion that goes together with psyops through the media, where all of a sudden, nobody knows the names of these cartel victims, which number in tens of thousands every year.
Yep.
But suddenly everybody will know the name of Alex Preddy or some teacher.
Renee Good.
Right? And the objective is to beat the government back from their war against these cartels. This is why I'm talking about these international organizations, because they are the ones that coordinate the work of all these NGOs that get activated around, laudable things like human rights and anti-government abuse, anti-police. That's where you get defund the police suddenly becomes a thing, right? Everybody, you even have what's I just saw on Twitter on X over the weekend, the mayor of one of the, I think, California cities calling all the gang members, all the gang leaders to unite to push back against the police. It's incredible. So this is a real war.
Gosh.
This is a real war. This is why I think this needs to be talked about, because we have to understand that the understandable backlash against police violence needs to be kept in perspective, because if police ends up killing 1 or 2 people in these violent altercations, first of all, we have to understand the circumstances. The police are doing a very dangerous, unpopular, and risky job. They're nervous, they're scared, and they're trained to be violent. That's what it is. That's how it is. So if you go there on purpose to obstruct them and start, you're taking a risk. The reason why people are encouraged to do this, and in many cases paid to do this, is because they're exactly looking for this effect, because they're exactly waiting for a trigger moment where they're going to launch the whole psyop against the government in order to force them to retreat.
Okay, Alex, this is why it's really important that people listen to what you have to say, and also read your articles on Substack and follow you on your channel, because you do some really great.
Yeah, so we've been going on for an hour, and unfortunately we had that fire alarm, so I have no idea if this will be watched by anyone, because they might get confused by that, but hopefully someone will. I've been the Spy Guy. I've given you some news from the world and giving you my perspectives on the stuff as well, and trying to introduce new ideas into the conversation. So if you like that, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It always helps out. And I like to get some growth going. And I understand I need to start doing daily content. Okay, bye-bye.